This is the first of our series, the Chautauqua speaker series for 16-17. And we're very pleased to have a guest speaker, but this is all facilitated by our own Ray Tao. Did I do that right? Tao? Okay. I'm working on my Chinese here. Who was able to bring in a gentleman by the name of Sam Waldo. More in just a moment. I just want to tell you I appreciate you coming to the speaker series this afternoon. I know you're going to find it extremely worthwhile. We are recording it because we know that there's some classes that wanted to see it and some others who weren't able to make it that want to be able to see it. So just keep that in mind. We invite you to ask questions at the end and enjoy the program. And so right now I'm going to bring Ray up to the front to introduce our speaker.
Hi, Sam.
Hi, Ray.
Thank you so much for coming. So I came across Sam's story actually just about a month ago on a WeChat post written by someone who I went to middle school with, actually about 20 years ago, and we just lost contact after that. And then, of course, thanks to internet and all the amazing apps, we just got connected. You know, speaking of this big idea of our interconnectivity of China this year. So this one day I read Sam Waldo's story. And I was just instantly moved by his story. And then right away, I wanted to share with as many people as I can, especially our students, our community. So I added him on WeChat, and soon he gave me this response that he agreed to be our guest speaker. So we're very appreciative of that. And actually, not only myself, Sam's story actually attracted more than 600,000 readers in 7 days on WeChat. And 5 million reads on the internet. So I'm sure Sam's personal fans on social media also probably increased drastically overnight. And I know he's very busy. He's been invited to many talks and conferences and press in China. And I'm just really lucky that we have him here today and telling everybody his amazing story with his colleagues. Before he starts, I want to read a little bit of his bio. So Sam Waldo, or Wei Wenjie, which is his Chinese name, is from Houston, Texas. He graduated from Columbia University in New York and has lived in China since 2010. Sam spent 2 years as a volunteer teacher in a small village in rural Yunnan province in China. Since then, he has helped establish and grow the nonprofit Education Insight to provide free vision care to students in the Chinese countryside. To date, they have donated over 16,000 pairs of glasses to children in Yunnan. Most recently, Sam is the co-founder of Mantra, an e-commerce sunglasses brand based in Beijing that gives prescription glasses to one needy student for every pair sold. Mantra wants to change the way that people shop in China, and its mission is look good, do good. So without further ado, I'm going to give the floor to Mr. Waldo, and thank you.
Okay, thank you very much for that introduction, Ray. So how is everyone today? So excited to see all of you smiling faces over in Kerrville, right? I laugh because I was actually in Marble Falls up until yesterday. That's where my parents live. It's I think just about an hour away from you guys. Just a really funny coincidence that today I'm giving this talk over Skype here. So thank you very much. I'm honored to be speaking with Schreiner University today, and thank you for that lovely introduction, Karen and Ray. So today, I'm just hoping to share a little bit of my story with you guys. I think that we can have some fun, and hopefully I will maybe give you guys a window into a part of the world that you might hear about, but not know too much about, or might not have too much experience directly dealing with. I'm not too sure about, the background of you guys in the audience. So for that reason, I'm going to keep my part of just the speaking relatively short. I'll tell my story and give my background, and then would love to open it up to questions, maybe to be a little bit more specific as to the areas that you guys are interested in, and we can take it from there for the second half hour or so. So without further ado, let me jump right in. So when it comes to these slides, am I sharing my slides here, or do we have are we doing something different? I can do that here.
Could you share your slides, Sam, please?
Great. Okay, how's that? Can everybody see?
Yes.
Wonderful. Okay, so yes, as Ray said, this is the story of my time in China, my previous 6 years, as well as 2 organizations, Education Insight and Mantra, 2 organizations which I have both been fortunate to help found and get off the ground. So the background that Ray gave in regards to my history is basically all you need to understand. I mean, I was born overseas. I grew up mostly in Houston, and then I went to Columbia. And then after university, in university, I started studying Chinese. I decided that I was really interested in China, and I took a couple of trips to China in 2008 and again in 2009. And really decided that it was someplace that was really, really attractive to me, especially as a young undergrad. Just at 22, I wanted to move out there to learn not just about the big cities, not just about the massive economic growth that you hear about in China, but I wanted to learn about what life was like when you get outside of those big cities. What is the part of China that foreigners especially don't really get to see, that's not in the tourist areas, and that's not in the major urban centers, but rather, in the countryside, where still about half of the population lives. And so when I was in university, I was recruited and decided to join a program called Teach for China. You guys have probably heard of Teach for America, I'm guessing. It's the nonprofit that brings recent college graduates to underprivileged schools in the U.S. And Teach for China is the same idea for China. So it paired me with another American and then 2 Chinese college graduates and sent us to rural Yunnan province to live and teach in the local community for 2 years. And real quick bit of background, Yunnan is in the southwest of China. It borders Laos and Myanmar, and has a lot. It has, I believe, 30 of China's 50 different ethnic minority groups come from Yunnan. It's an incredibly diverse and interesting place to live, both geographically, culturally, historically. And it's also one of China's poorest provinces. So it's the 29 of 32 provinces in terms of GDP. So definitely a place where you can experience a lot of what China has to offer and get a lot of different variety. So I was living and teaching in a rural community called Yongbao, which is about 8.5 hours away from the prefectural capital of Kunming, which maybe you've heard of if you study China at all. So here I am with my students. I was put in charge of a class of 60 middle schoolers. So it was a lot of responsibility. I was their only English teacher. So they had teachers for other subjects, but I was their full-time English teacher. And I taught them at the age of 11 or 12, I taught them their ABCs. And then by the time I finished the program and let them onto their studies, I taught them up through their second year of English education. And in that time, I got to see a huge range of issues with these kids. If we look on the screen here, there are some of these kids are in college right now. They went to Kunming, to the capital of the state there, and are getting 4-year degrees. And some of the kids in this picture, I can point out, they dropped out the second or third week of school, and they have been working either in a factory or on their farm since the age of 11 or 12, ever since then. So it was an incredibly challenging experience. Let me take a quick pause here just to make sure. Is everything fine with the audio and the visual? Anything? Is this all okay?
Yes.
Okay, great. Please just shout if the connection goes bad or anything. Yeah, so when I started teaching here, it was, we had about 6 weeks of training. I went into this program with my eyes open, knowing that it was going to be, I was not going to be very well prepared to step into the classroom on that first day, and I really wasn't. There were a lot of like incredibly specific cultural elements to teaching in these Chinese classrooms. The system works entirely differently than in the U.S. Just a small example of this. I didn't know, even though I'd studied Chinese for 4 years, I didn't know that you were supposed to refer to your students with their full name, not just their first name. So if a student is called like Liu Shaobo, then you're supposed to call them Liu Shaobo, not Shaobo, not like the smaller, shorter version of their name. Whereas I had grown up in the U.S. schools, my name's Sam Waldo. It would have been very strange for a teacher to have referred to me as Sam Waldo every time they called my name. So I was referring to these kids in the way that I was accustomed to, with the shorter versions of their names. But it turns out that that's more like what you do among friends. And whereas I was their teacher and I needed to maintain this teacherly distance from the students. So right off the bat, I had made this cardinal error and really made my students view me more as a peer or more as a friend or an older brother than a teacher. So that was one challenge. Another just illustration of the difference between these rural and rural classrooms in China and American classrooms is the students stay in the same spot all day. So the students don't move. The teachers come and go in the classrooms, and they're with the exact same set of students all day long. So these kids they'll have the same desks, the same spots, and the same classmates all year, and then they move with their class up to the next year. So they get to know each other incredibly, incredibly well. And the reputation and sort of the behavior within the classroom, it's just a very, very different dynamic from American schools. So I had to deal with all sorts of discipline problems and all sorts when I was teaching in Vietnam. This is a couple of years after I'd already been my full 2 years, and I eventually got very close with my kids. But especially when I first moved there, they were very difficult to deal with sometimes, especially like the young boys. I had all sorts of problems such as, which I'm sure, pale in comparison to some American classrooms, but I had kids, just lighting up cigarettes in class, coming to class drunk, throwing up, peeing on the floor, all sorts of weird and difficult behaviors, especially for a 23-year-old who had never taught before. But over the time that I spent there, I grew to understand, as I learned more about these students, their backgrounds, their families, and like where they come from and the different challenges that they had to deal with and the pressures they had. I grew to appreciate that, they wanted the same things that kids in America wanted. They wanted the same things that I wanted. They wanted to further themselves. They wanted to be able to make their parents proud and to earn money to buy the things they like and to take care of their families and to buy their parents the things their parents couldn't have. So really, I developed a tremendous sense of empathy for all of my students, even the very difficult ones, over my 2 years here. And we had a lot of fun as well. Here on the left, they do a bat cave, which is several hours outside of the town, where you can just kind of crawl in. It's this big cave where you can just kind of hang out. On the right, I went and visited. This is one of my students on the far right, and these are his parents in the middle. And they're very, very nice people, and incredibly rural. Like never been more than a few miles away from home. Their work is exclusively in the fields. They didn't have much education, if any, growing up, and really their life is their fields and farming. They live very, very simply. And so yeah, it was a terrific experience there. So we knew that there would be all sorts of challenges in Yunnan. I expected that it would be difficult. I expected that there would be different kinds of attitudes towards education, towards learning. But what we didn't expect was my elementary schoolers. What we didn't expect was that a lot of our students had really terrible vision, but they didn't have glasses. They didn't have the glasses they needed to succeed in the classroom. I had my class of 60 students. I had maybe one student who had glasses when I got there. 1 out of 60. And if you think about, an average ratio, like that number should be probably more like 15 or 20 kids, based on what you'd see in the US or what you'd see in an urban classroom in China. So we knew something was going wrong. And let me ask everybody to do a small thought experiment with me, real quick, around this issue. So, imagine you're like an 11-year-old kid in China, and you really like school. It's where your friends are. You're a good student, and you enjoy going to school during the day. But then you turn 12, you start going to middle school. It's a new environment, and you develop myopia. You develop short-sightedness. Now, suddenly, you have this new impediment to your learning. You don't understand it. You don't know why it's happening, or you don't even really understand that it is a problem for a lot of these kids. You just think it's something that happens to everyone, or something that maybe you'll have to get used to, or that this is the same thing that everybody else goes through. And so suddenly you don't like school so much. You can't see the blackboard very clearly, and as a result, you start to maybe mess around in class, writing notes or talking. You can't copy down the notes from the blackboard, and you become a sort of a problem student, you could say, or a more behaviorally challenged student. And this is particularly pointed in China. If you look at the green box at the bottom of the screen here, on the far right, I believe it's my right, I think it's your right too, on the far right is a yellow bar, and that's the blackboard. And the blackboard in China is where all of the learning takes place. Students do have books and notebooks, but a large majority of the actual class lessons that go on during the day are written on the blackboard and then copied down by hand by students in their notebooks. So if you imagine, if you can't see that blackboard, you don't have any means to get the information. And then if you look at all of the bars to the left there, the green bars, white bars, and red bars, those represent the different students. So at the front, towards the closest to the blackboard, the green bars there are for the best students. The best students sit up front in the Chinese classrooms. They're closest to the teacher, closest to the information, because they are the most important from the Chinese perspective. In the middle is all of the average students, and then on the back are the so-called problem kids. You can see in that picture, you can see there's a big gender imbalance as well. In the back of the classroom tend to be more boys than girls. So go back to the thought experiment. Now imagine you're that kid who develops short-sightedness, and what's going to happen when you start getting poorer grades, or when you start to struggle in class, is you'll get pushed further and further back to where you'll become further and further away from the blackboard. And as that happens, the blackboard will become more and more distant and more difficult to see, more and more difficult to read, and you will have a harder time getting that information. And then it just snowballs to where now you're 12 years old, you're 13 years old, and you don't like school at all. You sit in the back, you're a problem kid, you don't pay attention to the lessons, and your one chance at an education has been, potentially squandered. So we realized this in my second year of teaching, that this was going on, and we decided that there was something that we really need to do something about it. I'm going to pick up the pace a little bit here because I'm talking a little bit more than I'd thought. Basically, what we planned on was what we thought we would do is start a vision project. Let's get glasses for all of the students that need them in our classroom. So we worked with the local, so what we did is we thought, okay, we don't have many resources, we don't know a lot about this, but what can we do to just get glasses for our kids? And so we raised some money from friends and family, and we went to the nearby town and just found an eye doctor who would take our case. We invited him out to the school. We said we would pay him for his time and pay him for his glasses. We had him give prescription glasses to all the students in the school. And in my class alone, at that time, a lot of the kids already dropped out. I had about 52 students left. Of those 52 students, 14 needed glasses. So it's a huge ratio. And the impact for these kids was just tremendous. If you can imagine, being in this scenario and needing those glasses and never having them and never being given them, and suddenly you have the ability to see clearly, it just really is a life-changing thing. So we thought, okay, we need to keep doing this. We need to keep this project going. And we continued to run the project for the next 2 years on a part-time basis from 2012 until 2014. And that's when we started Education in Sight, and we were working to sort of build our program up. And then it was about 2.5 years ago that our co-founder Andrew and myself decided to start working on Education in Sight full-time. So a real quick overview of the kind of impact that we can actually see here. This isn't research that we've done ourselves. This is based on research done by the Stanford's Rural Education Action Project and another international NGO called Vision Spring. So it's been proven that glasses can increase productivity by 35% and increase monthly incomes by 20%. That's on average. So if you just kind of take the average income of these rural households and you apply those types of metrics, then we're looking at approximately a $14,000 increased economic impact per student, which is a very conservative figure. That's only because that student's going to live for the next 50 years. They could do all sorts of different things with that tool. But it really is proven that glasses are one of the most low cost and high impact educational interventions that you can make. So we thought that it was definitely worth pursuing with this model. And that's what we've been refining since 2012. So far, we've worked in 251 schools, donated 16,764 glasses, and done over 116,000 free eye exams. Our program has grown a lot in terms of its, we're more official, and we run now in partnership with the local governments, local hospitals, local education bureaus. We go through the principals and we work with the families, and we have a much more filled out curriculum that we give to students and teachers. So Education in Sight, the nonprofit, and establishing that and running that in China, especially as a couple of foreigners, has been a whole story that I could give an entire talk on just of itself. But to segue into the next topic here, as we were working with Education in Sight, we had one instance specifically that really made this clear to us, where a donor had pledged us about $80,000 to fund our project for an entire semester. That's a company based out of a Chinese city called Chengdu. And we were, we had talked with them. We went and visited them and spoke with them for several days to get all the details hammered out. And then we implemented the program. And then when it came time to pay the bills, they said, oh, we have had a corporate change of direction, and we're not going to do that anymore. So this was after they had already taken all their video footage and gotten all of the PR materials that they needed for their CSR campaign, for their corporate social responsibility campaign. But when it came time to actually pay, they balked and decided that they've already had what they needed, and they really didn't want to pay. And so we ended up with our local partners having already spent all of this money. And the money simply wasn't there. So we had to really scrounge, and it was a really tough time for us. But eventually, we made it up, and we even made some improvements. But that did teach us a lesson that donations and the charitable atmosphere in China specifically is really tough. It's really tough to get people that you can depend on year after year, or that want to grow the program as quickly as we wanted to grow it. And so we got the idea, since we're both Americans, and for us, especially like going to college in like the 2000s, We saw, the rise of all of these like really socially conscious brands that are, environmentally friendly or have social missions at the heart of what they do. And we thought, this could be an incredibly powerful tool in a Chinese context. And that was when we got the idea for Mantra, which is a buy one, give one, or buy one, donate one sunglasses brand designed specifically for the Chinese market, where we're taking this idea of, socially conscious consumption, like brands like Tom's, for example, and telling a story that we think will resonate specifically with Chinese consumers. We see a lot of brands in China, or pretty much all brands in China, they're relatively, shallow or focused on price or label or, exclusively, fashion, and there's very little consideration for other aspects like secondary values or brand values or social mission or anything like that. And we thought that we have a really cool idea, really cool potential to do that, to start a brand that has this idea, this buy one, give one idea at its core, and that could work where other brands haven't worked in China. So, for example, if you guys know Tom's Shoes, do you guys know Tom's Shoes, the shoe brand? People heard of them?
Yeah.
Okay, great. So they are in China, but they haven't done very well. And we were studying their case and trying to figure out why they haven't done as well in China. And we realized that there were a few factors, such as the transparency of their nonprofit program, and the sort of the origin of the story and all of that, which we don't think would resonate as well with Chinese consumers. And so we've been tweaking the model and making it something that would work specifically for Chinese customers. So we worked on this project for about a year and a half before we actually launched it in May of this year. And we've placed a huge emphasis on transparency, on providing Chinese customers with like a fun, upbeat, but very meaningful consumer experience. And the results have been really good so far. This is how Ray came across us, is that we've been doing well on Chinese social media. People are talking about our story. They seem to be really into it. And we had no idea whether or not this was going to work. But so far it has. And so it's been a very exciting few months for us. Here are just some pictures of our first line. Again, there's a lot I could say about all the product design and all of that. Really quickly, you can't see too clearly here probably, but the different patterns on the glasses, you can see they're all quite bright and colorful. Those are all inspired by different elements of Yunnan, the place where we lived and taught. So in the bottom right, you see kind of a zebra pattern, a colorful zebra pattern. That's inspired by the rice terraces in Yunnan, and the way that the sunlight hits the rice terraces, the rice paddies, at different times of day or different seasons. And then in the bottom left, that's a print pattern inspired by one of the local, ethnic groups' print patterns and textiles. So real quick, we've also made sure that the product was very high quality, good lenses, good materials. We use American imported plastic and polarized, fully UV protected lenses. That's all incredibly important for starting a brand in China because customers are very conscious of especially anything health related. So since you put glasses over your eyes, that's something that's really sensitive. This is what our primary channel looks like. This is our primary sales channel and social media channel. It's on a platform that Ray mentioned called WeChat. Once again, I could give an entire talk on WeChat and what it's like to use that. It's kind of like if WhatsApp and Facebook had a baby, sort of, but also with Amazon. I mean, it's got like basically everything from like blogging to IM to your own personal like photography and whatever is all on there, and it's absolutely dominant in the Chinese market, to where if you're trying to find Chinese customers, you can have this one platform and nothing else. It's really fascinating, but I won't go into too much detail there. More recently, we've had this media campaign, which has again gone really well. We've had some reports on Chinese TV and been picked up by some of the bigger, a couple of bigger news outlets in China. and talking about some really exciting partnerships that we could have with some major companies or major outlets in China to really get our story out there fast and to not just grow the company and have the company do well, but also to make a huge impact on our kids. It's something to where it's a really tricky time as well. It's a very challenging time for us. Simply because, as you saw from the earlier slide, we've donated 16,000 pairs of glasses so far, and that's been in the last 4 years. So what happens if we sell 16,000 pairs of glasses in a few months? Like, how do we scale the program that quickly and still maintain the quality and all of that? So, there's a lot of challenges that come with this type of media attention. This is a really interesting aspect of our project as well. So I mentioned earlier Tom's shoes and transparency. And so we knew that we needed to provide a highly transparent process for our customers. So with every pair of glasses, you actually get a code, a 2-letter and 4-number code that you can input on WeChat. Through this screen here. In the bottom left, you can see it, track your donation. You click that, and then you end up on this screen. And then it shows kind of like you're tracking a UPS or a FedEx package, like how's the process going, where are we in delivering your pair of glasses. And that's been, it's been really instrumental in having a lot of answers for a lot of our Chinese customers and the questions that they have. Because people, pretty much everybody who buys our glasses says, how do I know that the donation is going to actually go to where you say it is? Because Chinese consumers are very skeptical about dishonesty or corruption in charity because of recent experiences in China with those things. And just on one last quick story, this is Andrew here. He's co-founder of Education Insight and Mantra. And this is one of his students. On the left is him back in 2012 getting fitted for his first ever pair of eyeglasses. So we gave him his first pair of glasses, and then we didn't do anything. We didn't work hard for the next 4 years. But 4 years later, he's now, there's his on the right there, and he's finished at one of the top middle schools in the county, high schools rather, and is now going on to college in Kunming. And we don't take credit for that. He was the one that was working every day and struggling against all those odds to make it out of his local community and to the big city. But we are extremely proud of the contribution that we've been able to make to his life by giving him just that simple tool and allowing him to unlock his own potential. So I'll leave it there, and we can move on to questions. I'll leave this contact info up, but I'm also going to swap over to the video, and would love to take any questions.
Thank you so much, Sam. So I guess, well, if we have any questions, it's time to ask Sam.
I want to know how tall he is. I was curious with the picture with the family, he was almost up to the ceiling.
Oh, yeah. Hold on. Yes. Oh, how tall I am. Oh, no, I'm not tall. I am, I'm like 5'9½".
Okay.
So they were short. They're a short family.
And that's also like the southern part of China, and there are times that people from the south are shorter than the northerners.
Really?
Yes.
Interesting.
Actually, I have a question. Because when I heard your story, I saw their model of their company, right? Found Your Mantra. I was like, wow, our Schreiner's motto is find your way here. Such a coincidence. So I was really interested in that idea. And also, as a non-native speaker of English, it was my first time to hear the word mantra. Yeah. So I'd like to know a little bit more about what this word means and why you choose this name for your company.
Sure. Yeah, so mantra it took us a long time to come up with a name, and we had some real stinkers for a while. We landed on mantra. We picked it for a few reasons. One was we were trying to come up with a word that had an M at the beginning because we already had a logo with an M in it. We didn't end up using that logo, so that didn't really matter. Starting a business, especially for the first time, we focused a lot on things that we thought were important but really weren't. And like the name and the logo, that were definitely two of the things that we, really thought were super important. But in the end, we've learned that wasn't the most important part at all. Mantra we like because it's a word that Chinese people aren't very familiar with. But it's also not too intimidating. It's 6 letters. There's no strange, it's pretty easy to read. You can kind of sound it out from the letters. And it's also a word that, we did some research on the Chinese internet, and there isn't a very good definition for it, and it isn't very highly used in China. So we thought we could kind of own the word. We could own the word from, a search engine perspective and from a cultural perspective, that we could take this word and and really have it be associated with us in China. Now, when it comes to the meaning, we were thinking about mantra not in the religious sense. We don't want to conjure up too much imagery of like Eastern religion, but rather in the sense it's kind of used today in sort of pop culture in the U.S., like having probably like you intended at Schreiner with Find Your Way Here, just having a personal mission, something that centers you and that keeps you focused, and that is something that drives you from day to day. Something you can return to, and that you can kind of, maybe it's a short phrase or a few words that you can use to keep you kind of grounded and centered when things get tough.
Thank you.
Sam, I saw from the slide that you stated all of your glasses are manufactured with U.S. materials. So are they're manufactured there locally in Beijing?
So the glasses industry is fascinating, and it's been really cool getting to kind of dive into it a little bit over the last couple of years. So the material for our glasses is imported from Georgia, from the Eastman Company. And it's, a type of plastic that they manufacture. We do our actual manufacturing in Shenzhen, which Ray certainly knows. Maybe some of you guys know Shenzhen. It's by Guangdong. It's close to Hong Kong, also in the south of China. And there are all these different glasses manufacturing hubs in China. China is somewhere between 70 to 80% of the world's eyeglasses manufacturing, sunglasses and eyeglasses, all takes place in China. But there are all these different manufacturing hubs which have different levels of quality. So some of them are known for really quick and dirty, cheap knockoff sunglasses, or just kind of throwaway plastic party sunglasses, or the big international brands or more niche brands. And so we had to do a lot of research, and I visited over a dozen of these different factories, finding one where you feel like you can trust the people and the product quality is on, and they can really match your needs. Does that answer your question, Dan?
Yes, it does. It's very interesting. You consider it more challenging to start up a business in China than, say, here in the States?
Sort of. Only sort of, though. It's a different set of challenges. A mantra of mine is, in China, everything is possible, but nothing is easy. It's kind of like if you want to, doing literally anything, you'll run into bureaucratic red tape, you'll run into people who will just tell you that, oh, you can't do that, you can't do that, you can't do that. But it's also, you can actually accomplish a lot if you really keep at it. So for us, for example, being foreigners in China, at first we thought that it would be more of a hindrance, or that people would be perhaps cynical or skeptical of our motives, maybe, what are these kind of carpetbaggers doing here, or something like that. But really the opposite has been the case. People have been incredibly enthusiastic about us being here and about us trying to do this good work in a way that, it's a differentiator for us. And that's very important, especially when you're starting a sunglasses brand. There are hundreds and hundreds of sunglasses brands that already exist. So why do we need another one? And for us, it was a story. It was our story. It was, we want to do this because of everything that's come before, because of the nonprofit, because of the time that we spent here. We think that this is something that's incredibly important to us, that we really, that we feel like we have to do. And being foreigners in China has really kind of helped along that narrative. At the same time, you constantly come across like cultural, linguistic barriers, and you need to find really good partners to work with. Like, for example, the press coverage that we've had, we have a Chinese teammate who's sort of managed a lot of that, who can read something and say, oh no, this is not written in the right tone. That's not something that I could do. I could read something and understand it, but if we're trying to get kind of a cool, edgy tone for 20-somethings in urban centers in China, what types of colloquialisms do you use? What types of slang? What types of pop cultural references would you make? That stuff I have no idea. China is really, it's culturally quite dense in that regard, and that's something that I've gotten a little bit better at, but it's not easy.
Thank you.
This is Karen. I have a question, but first I just want to say thank you so much for sharing your story. I mean, it's not one that we hear every day for sure. And so my question for you is, you're such a young person to have done so many things in your life already, and especially with such a social conscience. I'm just wondering, what is the driving force in you that pushes you in that direction?
It was something that was instilled in me, I think, just from a very young age, I guess. My parents were always, they would always take us to do a lot of volunteer work, and were always very, I've gone down to Mexico a bunch of times to build houses and all of that, not really knowing that it was something that I would take with me into my adulthood, but I guess it really kind of germinated to where when I was choosing a career right out of college, I knew that I wanted to do something that was service related, to a volunteer project for at least a couple of years after I graduated. I always figured I would have plenty of time to work a job and earn an income and live in a big city when I was older, but how much opportunity would I ever have to go experience something entirely, like an entirely different pace of life, an entirely different way of living, and hopefully actually add real value to those communities. So that was what led me to do Teach for China to begin with, to choose that volunteer program. And then beyond that, I think we've all felt really, really fortunate that we've kind of come across this project. People often have a reaction when we tell them this, that it's basically saying, well, if what you're saying is true, then why is this a problem? Why wouldn't the government be solving this issue already? Why on earth, if these glasses are actually so important, why don't kids have them already? Because they don't cost that much money and they have such a huge impact. Meanwhile, the Chinese government is spending all of this money building these schools and investing in education. Why haven't they solved this problem yet? And our answer is, we don't know. They really should have. It's a really simple and easy, relatively easy to do compared to other educational interventions. So we've felt really lucky that we got to work on something that had such a clear, measurable, concrete impact, and that we could really feel that the work we did on a day-to-day basis really made a difference. And that kind of sense of achievement or accomplishment, of giving back, or of just making a difference, that really drives us day to day. Then when it comes to the brand, it's the same idea, mantra. It's the same idea, but even at a different scale, really. What we're trying to do with mantra, my vision for our impact there is that, in 5 or 10 years, China could be riddled with these brands. There could be all sorts, not just brands, but companies. The capitalist machinery of China, I hope, really can turn to where people start focusing on this, on the social impact side of what they do more and more. And I think that we really have the chance to make that happen if we do a good job. So, what a really cool opportunity that we have, and I think we're so fortunate to have it, that we, at a relatively, young age can really kind of try to do something much bigger than ourselves.
Thank you. Thank you.
Hi, Sam. It's Ray again. So I have another question. So related to that cool language, the cool, edgy language you talked about, I think you really find the right person because that it was the language of that post that attracted me actually to read that long story of that blog post, because usually those social media they post really short messages, right? Nobody likes to read long stories, but with fun languages like that, it really attracts a lot of readers. And I know that you are very fluent in Chinese as well. I know his Chinese is like superb, and I'm sure he can give the whole talk in Chinese if he wanted to. I think we have some students here studying Chinese. Do you have any suggestions or advice for our students or anyone who wants to learn Chinese language in the future?
Sure. Who's studying Chinese? Great. Well, honestly, Chinese is awesome. It's really tough. I would say I don't know what level you're at, but work through it and find a way to come here. It's obviously really hard. Chinese is really hard, especially at the beginning. My first couple of years, there's a lot of banging your head into the desk and because you're not used to knowing how to write these characters. Everything about Chinese feels like it's just inverted. It's just the reverse of English. Instead of it's every turn where English went right, Chinese went left, which is a lot of fun, but it also makes it pretty difficult. But there's definitely, you'll get over a hill when it comes to just learning. Once you've memorized kind of all of the different pictures and basically all of the different parts, then that part gets a lot easier. When it comes to actually speaking fluently, which is, I think, one of the most important things, reading and writing is honestly not that important these days. If you want to do something here, if you want to do something meaningful, if you can read, if you can listen and you can speak, then all the doors will be open to you, really. So when it comes to that, make sure that you're imitating native speakers. You need to be just soaking in the language, just little chunks to bites of language, like a sponge. So when I speak Chinese, it's just you could go back and every word or every phrase that I'm using is something that I will have heard. Maybe I'll have just heard it last week or just 10 minutes ago. If I'm in a conversation with someone and they use a word in the context, I might not know the word, but I'll just start parroting it back to them in exactly the same tones they use, in exactly the same phrasing and exactly the same cadence. And then if you do that a few times, then it can become yours. I think if you especially at a certain point, if you're relying on memorizing vocabulary, then you're only going to get so far, because learning Chinese in a vacuum doesn't really take you all the way. Better to really get involved with the language. And Chinese is tough as well because, foreigners in China, we always lament the lack of good Chinese TV. If you're a Chinese person learning English, there's tons of really cool American movies and shows and all this great pop culture that you can get into. But it's just not as developed in China. Chinese media is not as good. But instead, there are all these ways that you can actually be in China. You can live here and study and teach and experience, and that's really what'll take you over the edge.
I'm real curious about the artwork on the wall behind you.
I love it. It's beautiful.
So I'm at my brother's place right now. If any of you guys know Houston, this is Rice Military, and we were just at the silos just a few days ago, and they picked up these artworks. So, there you go. Sure. Anything else? Anybody have any?
We're running out of time. Yeah, okay. So,
No, yeah, I don't have any more questions. Actually, I have a final question. Can your glasses ship to America or overseas besides in China?
Not yet, not yet. We're working on it, but yeah, we haven't gotten there quite yet. International shipping is real tricky, it turns out. Getting that, it's especially when you're selling something that's not that expensive, then you ship it from China to the U.S. It's adds all sorts of complications. But hopefully in the next few months, we're going to work. We have a Facebook page up, so by all means go to. I think we just built it. I don't even know what it is. But hold on, let me find it because that's.
I tagged that out on the post. I posted.
Yeah, you can post it to everyone. So follow us on Facebook, and we'll be doing more stuff in the American market in the next few months.
and so we'll be able to help you in your efforts, because I think many of us here would love to do that.
Yeah.
Yeah, of course. Well, I mean, yeah, be in touch, and we'll see. Like we have, who knows if anybody knows. I mean, honestly, we're such a small company. We're 3 people full time on the brand and 2 people full time on the nonprofit. So we'll have all sorts of needs to grow and to expand. So it's great to meet you guys and get to know Schreiner. And it's great to start a friendship. Hopefully we can find ways to cooperate again in the future.
That would be great.
so much.
We really do appreciate you taking time out of your day, because we know you're really busy, and this is really special to us. We appreciate it.
What time is it, Sam? Your place?
I'm in Houston.
He's in Houston, yeah.
Houston?
Yeah.
I knew we had a
I go back to
problem.
China. I go back to China on Saturday.
Before you go, can we take a picture together?
Okay. We wanted so we can have the students come up by the screen so we can have a picture with you. Is that okay?
Sure, great. Yeah, of course. So
Okay. Everybody.
Students.
Kodak moment.
This is a Kodak moment.
She said everybody.
you've got to hold out.
I'm going to surprise my friend. Waffles. She hasn't enough yet. Okay. Okay. You good?
Okay.
Stay right there, Sam. Don't move.
Yeah, don't move. You got it. Excellent. Perfect. Thank you so much.
That's fun.
Well, thank you so much, and you have a wonderful rest of your day. And we appreciate it.
All right, take care, guys.
All right.
Thanks so much for the opportunity. Appreciate it. Bye, everyone. Thanks for coming.
I'll probably come in just a little later.
Wait, maybe you can sign.